Assalaamu Alaikum and welcome to the Muslim Gamers podcast. We recently recorded a full episode for episode 3, which ended up being about 2 hours and 15 minutes long. We've heard your feedback about the length of our episodes and we're actively working on making them more concise and more engaging for you. We're experimenting with different formats to find the best approach for our community. To ensure that more people can enjoy our content, we're releasing the main topic from episode 3 as a separate segment for you to enjoy. You'll find this segment to be significantly shorter than 2 hours and 15 minutes. This segment will also be a part of the full episode, which we'll release in about a week from now. We truly appreciate your support as we continue to grow this podcast, and we welcome any feedback on how we can improve the show. Without further ado, here is the main topic or segment from episode 3, where we discuss CVE, or countering violent extremism in gaming. Let's jump into it, because I know we've been talking about a lot of really upbeat, kind of lighthearted stuff, but it's this part's where things are going to get a little bit more serious. And just to give a little bit of context, I came across a couple of videos on when browsing through Instagram Reels about how law enforcement, there's now more official strategies and official ways that law enforcement is trying to surveil the video game space. There's been a lot of law enforcement presence officially in cyberspace in general, but the video game space, is being seen as a place where there could be some sort of either recruitment or even spreading of extremist views. A lot of it comes from this one article put out by the GAO, which is the General Accountability Office of the U.S. government. It's a federal office, talking about strategies put out by the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security for trying to monitor these spaces. And a lot of it talks about domestic terrorism or domestic extremism, domestic violent extremism. And the article started out with countering violent extremism, CVE. Now, I don't know about a lot of people listening. I know a lot of this does. It's more centered around the American history of CVE and what Muslims have had to endure with that. The Muslim community has had to endure with that.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely similar things happening in different parts of the world. I know we have probably different people from the world listening to this as well. But CVE, or countering violent extremism, does not ring a good bell for most Muslims, because it's basically
American Muslims.
American Muslims get targeted unjustly, whether it's because part of it can be just some undercover person, whether either works for the FBI or is just getting paid by the FBI or any other law enforcement organization, can just go in there, start trying to see who might be prone to be extremist, try to get them incited. And
just for like our non-US listeners, I guess a quick rundown, right, of what CVE was. Right, they were basically offering money to organizations that were affiliated with certain groups, right? Their main targets,
Muslim groups. They were targeting Muslims. Let's not beat around the bush. The entire program exists to target the Muslim community.
But they did it in a way, obviously, to cover their bases. To cover their bases, they included other groups, but the main target were Muslim groups, right? Like you had your massages, your cares, your, mass and ICNA, so they targeted these organizations, offered them money, and in order to establish a relationship with them so that they could have some communication back and forth into their membership and see who was in their membership, see who they could communicate with, and get them to report, we're seeing these kinds of suspicious behaviors, just a lot of, like you were saying, COINTELPRO type.
A lot of entrapment. I mean,
COINTELPRO.
In Southern California alone, we've had like so many cases of those.
Yeah, we can go on and on about all that, but let's skip ahead. Just want to give some historical context.
Yeah, and a lot of it too is it could just be something, because when you look at what there was this other article, I forgot who was or which office put it. I think it was called the Office of Justice Programs. It's another federal three letter agency. They had this long piece of documentation about what to look for as signs of extremism, and some of it
I
was like I just
I
kind of
think what
skimmed
I
through
think
it.
it was like NYPD actually.
There was one NYPD that was specific
Yeah.
for the NYPD. The OJP one, the Office of Justice
Mm,
Programs one, was more federal, and I think it was
gotcha.
given as a guideline for these three-letter organizations around the country.
Yeah. And the
And
guidelines were very vague, right? Like praise 5
it
times a
was no,
day.
yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, someone starts to become a little bit more like they showed
They
this
grow their
one where a
beard.
guy, they grow their beard, or they have a bit of a weird beard and start wearing a kafia, or they start giving more dawah. It literally mentions dawah in there, so
Yeah.
it's like, oh, they start becoming a little bit more religious. That's something to watch out for. It's a possible
Suspicious.
suspicious. So who knows,
Yeah.
with all these different, not to get into the masjid drama or drama that happens at different masajid or different organizations, it could be one person doesn't like the way certain person is acting up, and they could be, I'm not saying it maybe it does happen, I'm not saying it's
But
happened,
it creates the
but it
opportunity for this to
exactly.
happen.
Exactly. And seeing it in this more recent, and this article from the General Accountability Office regarding law enforcement presence or surveillance in the video game space, that article came out earlier this year in January. And basically, it kind of outlined it as um, it allows these companies like maybe it could be Twitch or Discord, or I want to say even Roblox and a couple of other places
It was
where
Roblox,
Anywhere
Discord, Reddit.
yeah,
there's
thank you,
communication happening.
It's like the social. It's the social gaming communities, basically, like
right,
Yeah.
Reddit,
yeah,
Discord, Roblox.
where if there's people that are found to be just violating some of the terms of service, which that alone is pretty vague. The guideline is for those corporations or for those companies to be able to share that data with law enforcement, and that itself is it's because it's very vague. It's that just means anybody could be a target for this, and it
So
really hinders the safety that we kind of get from, like, it's no longer free speech space. There's a lot of thought policing going on there, where it's like
I
you
have
really have to be careful.
mixed. I have a bit of mixed thoughts on this. Obviously, given the history of governmental agencies in the U.S. and how they've spied on minority groups, I don't necessarily inherently trust them. With that said, the reason I have mixed feelings is I don't know how many of you are familiar with Gamergate, an incident that happened in 2014. And that whole thing was like, if you learn about it, it's the dumbest thing. It was massively overblown. And Gamergate, believe it or not, is the reason the alt-right and all these alpha male, Andrew Tate, whatever you want to call them, all these groups, you can trace their origin, like that whole manosphere. Everything traces its origin to Gamergate. And Donald Trump's former
In some way or
campaign
another.
strategist, Donald Trump's former campaign strategist, Steve Bannon, he even attests to this. Steve Bannon at the time worked for Breitbart, which is a well-known, very
Didn't
conservative
he own
publication.
Breitbart, or like was like big? Like
I
he
don't
was
know
up
if he
there with
owned
Breitbart,
it. I don't know if he. I don't
he
know.
owned it. I
Breitbart
think
was.
he was like, we could just fact check.
like
this
editor
real
in
quick.
chief or something. It was pretty big.
Yeah, he
Something
was like
like
some sort of
that.
executive. Yeah.
Yeah.
So at the time, for Breitbart employed this journalist named Michael Yiannopoulos, very eccentric, very weird edgelord guy, and he basically, when Gamergate happened, he went into that space, and Steve Bannon himself said, "Yeah, I'm harnessing the energy of these like white male, these kind of not disenfranchised, that's not the right word, but these like white males who feel, mediocre, they feel like, society's kind of abandoned them, they fell to the wayside." And
He was the
he's like, "Yeah,
executive chairman.
there you go."
Thank you.
So, and Gamergate, it led to, I have friends who are game devs, like especially women and other minorities. They were harassed, doxxed, their families were like, sent death threats. They were like fearful for their lives. They had to go into hiding, a few people. And the effects of Gamergate, we're feeling them today. The rise of Trump, again, in some way, shape, or form, you can find the origins going back to Gamergate, because that same community, it overlaps heavily with the manosphere and all these things. And recently, kind of a Gamergate 2.0 happened with, I don't know if you guys follow the whole Sweet Baby Incorporated thing. Sweet Baby
Sounds
Incorporated.
vaguely familiar.
No.
So Sweet Baby Incorporated, they're a consulting company. And what they do is literally, this isn't like a conspiracy. Let's say I'm making a movie or a story with Black characters. I'm obviously going to consult, readers or viewers to read the story and be like, okay, did I unintentionally make a character kind of a caricature or anything insensitive?
Yeah. Am I being true to like what this person would be?
Exactly. And that's the whole purpose of this consulting company. And they've consulted on games like Spider-Man, Last of Us, Alan Wake 2.
God of War Ragnarok.
Yeah.
These consulting companies are very common. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Like everyone uses them. Just like, hey, take a look over this.
All kinds of media. Yeah.
And the consulting company, they don't have a final say. It's not like they say, nope, we don't like this character. This is a little too offensive. They might say that, but ultimately it's up to the company to take their, advice and do anything. Yeah, they just give recommendations. So there was a Steam group, and the Steam group basically would list every game that Sweet Baby Inc. Consulted on. And this Steam group was dedicated to, we need to boycott these games. Now, this was a tiny group with like a couple hundred something members. Now, as I'm sure all of you who've lived on the internet for a while, one of the cardinal rules of the internet often is, if you see something festering and it's small, kind of ignore it. Like on MG, real quick, as an admin, sometimes we'll see teenagers come in, guys, help us report this server, they're Islamophobic. And we're like, just ignore it, dude. It's a tiny server with like little something people. You're just giving it more attention. Mm-hmm. One of the executives of Sweet Baby Inc., instead of ignoring this little obscure Steam group, they decided to try to get that Steam group banned, which in turn gave it even more attention and kind of made the whole thing worse. And then suddenly Sweet Baby Inc. became like, on the spotlight. And basically a few months ago, it was basically the discourse I was seeing. It's like Gamergate 2.0. A lot of people, they were like, the woke have taken over video games, save video games, they're political. And so going back to this stuff with the FBI surveillance, there is a rise. There straight up is a pipeline among gaming spaces into alt-right spaces. Because if you're like an average teenager who watches like, your favorite Twitch streamer or whatever, a lot of them have these types of viewpoints, and the way the YouTube algorithm works, they do lead you to these types of, like content and pipelines. Like one day you're watching your favorite, I don't know, Minecraft streamer or your favorite gaming commentator. And then maybe the gaming commentator is a little, centrist or conservative. Next thing, your algorithm suggests you like, oh, this is why the woke and the feminists or whatever are ruining society and culture. And then, there is a straight up pipeline to this. And I have a lot of friends who are like high school, middle school teachers. They've mentioned like these middle schoolers, obviously they're always going to have issues in every generation, but they're like straight up quoting Andrew Tate. Like obviously middle school guys are going to say dumb stuff about girls, like girls have cooties, it's an evolution of that. But they're straight up quoting Andrew Tate and straight up saying like misogynistic things. Like and they're middle schoolers, their brains aren't fully developed, they don't even fully know what they're saying. So that is a problem. There is a problem of like gaming spaces, particularly with teenage boys, white male teenage boys, into that extremism. But at the same time, I don't know if I trust the FBI to like handle it. In this case, Muslims aren't the ones being targeted here, but at the same, like again, a lot of these teenagers are like.
I have some thoughts. But finish your point.
With CVE too, right? Like,
yeah.
I don't know if that's
was worded to be vague and to go after.
It was worded to be vague, go after domestic, right? And like there was a rise at that time again of also alt-right groups, right? And like alt-right groups were listed, but who was the end target of that campaign? Like in actuality, it was Muslims who were feeling, minorities who were feeling the effect. So do we really trust the FBI with this? Like you were reiterating, just to reiterate your point.
And with a lot of these people who go into the gaming to alt-right pipeline, majority of them are like young teenagers. They don't know any better. Like a lot of them maybe don't have a lot of older brothers or like friends, mentors.
So they're not committing active crimes.
Yeah, exactly. They're just saying dumb, edgy stuff, which I've ran into a couple of people on some Muslim teenagers on MG like that, and I've had to, have a one-on-one talk to them and stuff. But yeah, these people. Now, are there some people who have actively committed crimes, grooming, or like doing sexual crimes and stuff? Yeah, but the vast majority are teenagers who they don't know any better. There was a free Andrew Tate protest in Greece when he was first arrested, for example. And if you watch the video of the protest, most of those guys don't even have facial hair. I don't think their voices have even cracked yet. Like they're literal children. I'm sure you guys have heard of Sneeko and stuff. The vast majority of people watching these type of content creators are teenage boys. And yeah, I don't think getting the feds involved is going to solve the issue. If anything, it's going to
make it a lot worse.
You're creating future juvenile delinquents and then putting more people into the system and making a bigger problem.
Just expanding the surveillance state.
Yeah, I have so many thoughts on this. Okay.
Actually, before you get into it, Abdul, can I just mention one thing? Because based on just, because at the end of the day, these organizations, these three-letter organizations, FBI, DHS, OGP, whoever, you're talking about, they're going to be looking at the end of the day, when it comes to like their budget and, the people that that are working there and they're getting paid, just like any corporation, metrics are going to be looked at for them.
Yes.
And what's the main metric looked at there? It's the number of arrests. It's not how many crimes have we prevented, because there's no way short of Minority Report that you can tell how many crimes you prevented.
Future crimes.
Yeah, we don't have a Future Crimes Bureau. We don't have Tom Cruise.
You can do a statistical analysis and see like over the year trend how it's fallen, but it's not like we've prevented this much crimes exactly. Yeah, at the end of the day, it's how many arrests did we get? How many people?
Yeah, and those arrests could just be from like anyone where it's like some sort of an entrapment where someone is just coerced into doing something, and then they just, like you said, they're teenagers that just don't know any better. They might have done something dumb, and they could just get entrapped in this and might even find themselves, maybe not teenagers getting arrested because they fall under juveniles, but young adults could get arrested. And there's quite a few that we know that. Or not we know, but that we've heard of many stories that that may have gotten arrested, and some of them maybe not get arrested, but their lives have been ruined because of their names getting dragged through the mud just because someone snitched on them for something. When you're looking at these three-letter agencies, they're gonna look at the complaint and see, okay, how much of a threat it is, and we can't really trust them to assess that threat when they don't even, when all they're looking for is just to get their arrest numbers up.
And they're known for manufacturing arrests with entrapment, right? Because okay, maybe this person has ideas and views that they have been absorbing from being in these spaces. That doesn't necessarily mean that they can't be saved. They're not acting on these things
unless they've actually committed. And there are cases where crimes have been committed, like absolutely arrest those people and stuff. But if they're just spouting ideas, like, deplatform them, like ban them, deplatform them, but like arresting
and I feel like it almost incentivizes, right, the FBI and these agencies to like what happened with the drug trade, right? In order to find the cartels and get into it, they start spreading more drugs, right? So like literally there could be FBI agents who are being paid to spout more of this misinformation to get into these spaces, right? Like you're not helping the problem.
Yeah. Man, I have so many points to this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Where to even start? So yeah, this is this whole thing is overall such a huge it's so bad, especially for the Muslim community, right? Like we have dealt with CVE for quite a long time now, and it's obviously a program that was specifically developed to target Muslims, and is specifically worded to target Muslims and Muslim communities, and has damaged us immensely, right, over the years. And this is, I feel like this is like an evolution of that, in a way for them to get into a huge part of CVE was them trying to entrap younger Muslims, like Muslim youth, that were active in the masjid. Like I've been part of young Muslims growing up, and we would legit leadership. We would have talks and trainings on like trying to identify, like how to identify potential FBI informants, because that's how crazy it was, and of us trying to be aware.
Post 9/11 generation of kids, we literally see this in our masajids and stuff happening like on
and legit basis. there were cases in my community where there was FBI informants, in our larger communities. And like as the owner of the MG Discord, like this has been top of mind for so long for me, like it's a space where I'm like, it's so easy for them to come in and subtly come in and start influencing the members of our community and taking them down a road. And it's really hard for us to stop that. I mean, moderation is the name of the game, and we've done our best to the best of my ability to try to stop that, or at least to identify that if we see something sus. But yeah, it's huge, man. Like this is there's no positive sides to this that I see.
I completely agree. There are better ways to. In fact, I know.
And like, to your point of like, yes, like there have been way more right-wing extremist white extremist groups that have popped up, right? But we don't see an organized effort from the agencies to try to get that down. As
the ironic part about that is the same agencies report that they are the highest threat to national security.
They report it, stability. But they don't do anything about it. Like they whipped up this entire CV program for us, but there's no program similar to that for white extremism that we know of today. And Discord is such a breeding ground for these organizations, right? Like some of if you think about it, like some of the shootings that have happened recently, they originated from Discord groups. And I remember one of the manifestos was like even posted on like a Discord group, like that like the guy was from this one group that was an extremist group, and I think it was the Uvalde shooting. The kid that did it, right. He was he was on Discord, and he put his entire manifesto on Discord, right? Is law enforcement doing anything about that? I mean, if they are, like, they're doing a very crappy job.
To be fair, there are, because I've done some research on this on the side myself. The FBI has set up programs to target white extremist groups. But the problem is the amount of funding that goes into it. And even then, again, the problem is always oversight and overreach. It's why, do you guys know Jonathan A.C. Brown, the academic?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
So I forget which incident it was, but it was a white male shooter or someone. He did an act and people were calling it terrorism. And he said, let's not call this necessarily terrorism, because he's like, that word is very vague, and what's going to happen is when you use vague terms with law enforcement agencies, you give them an inch, they will take like a mile with these things. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Discord, I would say, like, they have cracked down. I don't know if you remember, this story's kind of funny. It's sad and funny. There's a 20-year-old, I think he was in the Air Force. he made a Discord group just so he could leak confidential military documents to impress
Yeah,
his
I remember this.
13-year-old
That was
Minecraft.
hilarious.
But like, not he. You know, we've heard of people leaking confidential documents, like, oh, he got caught in a Russian honeypot to impress that, you know, cute Russian girl who's like a, you know, a FSB spy or a Kremlin spy. No, it was to impress a bunch of teenagers. Like, yeah, look, yeah, I work for the government. Hey, look, these are the confidential plans and stuff.
Love
He
it.
got
Yeah,
busted.
it
The
wasn't
server
for an
was.
Oh,
expose.
yeah.
It was the flex. That was the best
Yep.
part.
Yeah, yeah. Not even the War Thunder forums where they leak things to win an argument. Like, no, you're wrong. This tank model actually uses this.
I remember that one. Yeah.
So there are efforts to combat it, and to be fair, a lot of those efforts aren't talked about, like in the news. You have to go like digging for them. Like the FBI does. They have a shady history and past, but they're also not. And I'm not saying this as like necessarily defending them. I'm just looking at them like from an objective, neutral perspective. They're not necessarily a monolithic organization. They're a massive organization. When it comes to, for example, CASM, child sexual material distribution, I would absolutely, if there's proof of that, I would absolutely tip off the proper authorities. So that stuff is terrifying. It's disgusting.
Absolutely.
It's dangerous.
Yeah, for sure.
And they do have a good track record of shutting, you know, that type of stuff down. But when it comes to minority groups and like terror threats, it's where things, you know, violate constitutional rights and stuff. But yeah, going back to the main topic of like them going into like these gaming groups, I've heard of several stories where people had these viewpoints, and then once they grew up, you know, touched some grass, maybe got a girlfriend, got some more life experience and wisdom.
Just kidding.
Hey, listen, a lot of them are non-Muslims, right? So, they basically got life
Keep it halal.
experience. They turned back on their ways, and they even like went back and they said, yeah, I used to be like, you know, this type of person. I had these viewpoints, and then I just kind of grew up. It's unfortunate that a lot of the teenage boys, these are the things they struggle with. It's really unfortunate, but my philosophy's always been, if you can solve an issue without making a law to solve the issue, that's what you should go for. Because as soon as you make something into a law and you get the government involved, that's when you run into problems. You should let the community solve it. And I think the community, like people in the community, everyone kind of needs to step up. Like parents need to, for younger kids, kind of monitor, like, hey, what kind of forums who are you talking to? Like, you know, what kind of forums are you going to? What are they posting? You know, kind of monitor that type of stuff. And if they see their son, daughter,
we've been working on since the.
Yeah, we can do probably a whole episode on like, we really need to talk about the rise of like Muslim male red pill like individuals and
Absolutely. Oh yeah, that's a whole episode in of itself.
Muslim follow. Like that's the whole thing. How it's super toxic. But
yeah. So it's a whole societal effort, and a lot of people. I know a lot of left leaning people. They'll be like, yeah, well, the FBI is going after like, you know, these white supremacist extremist groups. What's the problem?
That's what they said with CVE.
Exactly. The problem is that that's an easy Band-Aid fix. That may kind of fix it in the short term, but it doesn't solve it socially and societally, because that's a more complex issue and requires everyone to get involved. Teachers, parents,
effort.
community.
Right.
Yeah, it's a community effort. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think it just speaks to a larger, just to go very zoomed out on this, it speaks to a larger issue of just the breakdown of society in general, right? We've become very individualistic, and people are seeking communities wherever they can. And some get lucky and they find good people early in life. And unfortunately, there's many cracks, and people find the wrong communities and go down these paths.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
One thing I can say as someone who's, you know, I'm sure Abdul can attest to this too, is, you know, trying to raise kids is it made, I don't know about you, Abdul, but for me, the phrase "it takes a village to raise a child"
Yes,
it like rung true. Like,
it's
trying to raise our kids,
so
because
essential.
it's not just the parents, but it's also like there's so much that, if you want to parent right, and you want to make sure your kid inshallah grows up to be, a good individual, and in our case as Muslims, good Muslims. There's a lot that we have to monitor. And sometimes, just to give as just an example, I know maybe a stand-up comedian is not a good example to give as the ideal parent, because a lot of them use their experience as being, for lack of a better term, bad parents as their stand-up material. I can't remember who was at the top of my head, but he was talking about, oh, my kids, my friend, he left his kids at my place, just, and they just wanted to color. They were so polite, so nice. I went
Hassan
to see where
Minaj.
my kids were. No, it wasn't Hassan
No,
Minaj. It was I can't remember. It was
I remember
white
this.
white dude, bald dude, very raunchy stuff in a stand-up
Bill
material.
Bill Burr.
Bill,
Not
yeah.
Bill Burr. Not Bill Burr. Is the other bald white dude with the beard.
Which bald
Yeah,
white?
that narrows it down.
There's
Steve,
yeah that
no, it's not Steve.
Louis
Steve Trevino, 'cause
C.K.
Steve
George
Trevino's
Carlin. Like, there's a bunch of white
Yeah,
male bald.
it's not important who it is. Okay, let me
Anyways,
just mention
continue.
that. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not important who it is, but what he mentioned
Anyway.
was, his like, these girls were coloring, and his two boys. He asked them, "Oh, where are the boys?" "Oh, we don't know. We didn't see them leave." He goes and sees them outside. He's like, "Oh, I thought you guys were coloring." He's like, "Yeah, but we broke all our crayons and put it in the mailbox." And hearing that, I was watching that with my wife, and hearing that as a parent is like, that's a definite no-no for our kids. They do that, there's definite consequences for that. And it's like, he was just like, oh, well, what are you gonna do? It's like, if that's the approach that a lot of parents take to this, if that's like what the message is, even seeing on a lot of social media. I know not every parent is like this, but I'm seeing a lot of this, so I can't really tell as to what the statistic is. But if that's becoming an accepted mentality of raising your kids, of being kind of laissez-faire or like hands off about that, that worries me about
It's probably an extreme reaction, right? As you shift between extremes,
right.
And I feel like a lot of the parents who are taking that approach were raised among a generation that
It's very
parents
strict.
that were very,
Yeah.
very strict on them.
Yeah,
Very
we can
strict,
have a-
physically, emotionally abusive. So yeah,
That's a whole
So then you
different
get the other
episode.
result, which is
Exactly.
a little too lax.
Mhm.
Yeah, maybe we could jump into that in more detail in a separate
We can
episode.
have a parenting 101 con.
Islam is the way, the middle path.
Ouch. Way to break everybody's
My-
ears there.
my ears, man. Apologies
I'll
to
fix
the
that in post, don't
listeners, especially those with the headphones.
Yeah, but like you said, it's a societal issue. It's a community issue. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Abdul. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, to your point about a societal issue, of it, this being a societal issue that we need to address. And because I keep thinking back to MG, right? It's kind of what I center around a lot of my thoughts. I don't know the success rate of us being good at our jobs and moderating. I honestly couldn't tell you. Maybe Laughing Man can have a better judgment there, but it's
How would you even track that stat?
Right, exactly.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Like we really have tried our honest effort to stamp out extremism as we see it on the server, and I'm going to tell you, it's such an impossible task because we have people from around the world. They have different views. What they see as normal, we might see as like, hey, this is crossing the line. Same vice versa. What we see might normal, they're like, this is wrong. And it's such an impossible line for us to tug, and we do it every single day. And the thing is, you please nobody when you do this, right? Everybody's pissed off. The people on the left are pissed off. The people on the right are pissed off. And like the people in the middle are like, we're also pissed off because you're doing things
You're not doing anything. Like,
you're not doing enough, or you're not doing anything, or you're doing too much, and like, oh, you're censoring me here, well, I can't talk about this.
No winners.
And
No winners.
there's no winners. It's an impossible task that we are burdened to have. And it's truly a thankless job, so you should Maybe thank Laughing Man sometimes.
I think it's not me, it's a team effort, all the other moderators.
Yeah.
And not just the mods, the other people on the server who, because sometimes
There's so many other people now. Yeah, it's
sometimes people won't come to the mods, they'll confide in a friend, and then the friend will come to us and tell us, hey, there's this issue, can you guys do something about it? So it's honestly a team effort.
yeah. And when we talk about raising a village, I honestly it does feel like a village sometimes on MG, especially when crisis has happened, because everyone's kind of hands on deck. Like, oh, this person has an issue. Like, let's try to fix it. As a community. I really like that about MG. I thought that was one of the things that we really built together well.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
That's awesome.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, I think that's a really good note to end on.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah. Yeah. I know we're past the 2-hour mark for this episode. For those that stuck through to the end, thank you guys for your support on that. Thank you, Abdul Nail Laughing Man, for joining us here on this really long episode. It's like we're approaching 11 p.m. as we're recording this. If you're already listening to us here on your podcast platform or watching us on YouTube, you already know where to find us. If you don't know where to find us, we'll have the YouTube link in the show notes, on both the YouTube video and the podcast episode. You can just search for Muslim Gamers Podcast on any podcast platform. You should be able to find us there. And please, we are always willing to hear your feedback. Any topics you want us to discuss, let us know how we're doing. I know one common complaint is that our episodes are getting a little bit too much on the long side. We didn't really help that with this episode, but maybe we might try to cut things down. And I know we have plans to post a lot more of this stuff in a short form content form on social media. So stay tuned and be on the lookout for that as well.
I blame Microsoft. I blame Microsoft. It's the Series S's fault that the episodes went too long. There.
So other than what Laughing Man had to blame Microsoft for it, Abdul and Nail, and even Laughing Man, do you guys have anything else you want to add?
No, I think we've talked enough.
We pretty much covered a lot of ground.
Lots of yapping, guys. Thanks for yapping with me.
All right, listeners, viewers, thanks for sticking with us for this long, and we will see you on the next episode. Assalamu Alaikum.